On the day my son was supposed to celebrate his love, he brought his fiancée to my home, not for joy, but for my will. They demanded everything, my house, my savings, my life insurance, for their wedding, then told me to leave. My heart broke, but a quiet resolve sparked within me. You won't believe what happened next. Like, share, and tell me where you're listening from. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee always brought a sense of peace to my mornings. It was a ritual, a small luxury I allowed myself each day. I poured the steaming liquid into my favorite mug, the one Ethan had given me years ago, a clumsy pottery piece from his high school art class. It was lopsided, painted with a faded, slightly smudged portrait of a dog he swore was me in canine form. I cherished it more than any expensive gift. Back then, he was all warmth and awkward affection, always seeking my approval, always quick with a hug. Now that boy felt like a ghost, replaced by a polished, distant version of himself, especially since Cassandra had entered his life. The doorbell chimed, a sharp, insistent sound that shattered the morning calm. I glanced at the clock. They were early. My heart, which had just begun to settle into its usual rhythm, gave an unwelcome flutter. I opened the door to find Ethan, looking crisp in a suit I didn't recognize, standing next to Cassandra. She was immaculate, as always. Her tailored cream dress, perfect hair, and a smile that seemed professionally applied rather than genuinely felt, immediately put me on edge. Her eyes, however, held a glint I couldn't quite decipher. Something calculating, dismissive. "Mom," Ethan said, his voice devoid of its usual casual warmth. He didn't hug me, simply nodded. Cassandra offered a tight, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. My home, usually filled with memories and comfort, suddenly felt cold, invaded. They didn't sit on the worn, beloved sofa. Instead, they took the formal chairs in the living room, a space I rarely used except for special occasions. Ethan placed a thick, legal-looking folder on the coffee table between us. My old pottery mug felt heavy in my hand. "Mom," he began, his voice flat, "Cassandra and I are getting married next month, and we need to discuss your assets." Assets. The word hung in the air, clinical and jarring. My assets? The folder contained documents I recognized with a jolt, copies of my will, deeds, financial statements. My breath hitched. My assets? Ethan, what on earth are you talking about? Cassandra leaned forward, her perfect smile unwavering. "Don't be so dramatic, Alara. Smart families plan ahead. This is just part of our due diligence. Your financial situation directly impacts our future, you see." Her tone was patronizing, as if I were a child being gently corrected. I looked from her to Ethan, searching for the son I knew, the one who would never discuss my personal finances like this, especially not with a stranger. But his eyes were like glass, reflecting only a chilling detachment. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking through me. "We need you to sign over the house, your savings, and your life insurance policy, Mom. Immediately." My mug clattered softly as I set it down. My hands were trembling. "Sign over? Everything? Why, what for?" Cassandra sighed, a slight impatient puff of air. "For security, Alara. We want a real wedding, a proper start to our lives together. These things aren't cheap. Your contributions will ensure we don't have to compromise on our vision." "My contributions?" I repeated, the words tasting bitter. "This is my home, Ethan. My life savings, my insurance, meant to take care of me in my old age." Ethan shifted, avoiding my gaze. "Don't worry, Mom. We've looked into some really nice retirement communities. They have activities, medical staff. You'd be very comfortable there." The suggestion hit me like a physical blow. Retirement communities. He was talking about discarding me, about removing me from the home I had built, the life I had created, as if I were a piece of furniture past its prime. What if I say no? My voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a lifetime of love and unspoken pain. Ethan's silence was answer enough. His jaw tightened, and Cassandra's expression hardened. It wasn't a request, it was an ultimatum. A cold clarity washed over me. I thought back to the subtle digs over the past year. Cassandra's casual comments about my extravagant grocery bills, the unnecessary repairs I made to the house, my unrealistic expectations for my retirement. She'd pointed out my age, my single status, how I should be enjoying my golden years rather than worrying about property. Each comment, seemingly innocuous, had been a chip, slowly eroding Ethan's affection and loyalty, replacing it with a cold calculation. She had masterminded this, turning my son into her instrument. My gaze met Ethan's once more, searching. There was no flicker of the boy I remembered. No warmth, no hesitation. This was a man driven by something I didn't recognize, something sinister. "I won't sign," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. Ethan stood up slowly, his height suddenly imposing. His voice, when he spoke, was icy, devoid of any filial connection. "Then you need to leave, Mom. You need to leave your own home." Cassandra's smile returned, wider this time, a chilling affirmation of their victory. It confirmed everything. They weren't just after my money. They were after my very existence within these walls. My home, my sanctuary. With trembling hands, I went to pack. A small suitcase, a few essentials. The reality of it all was a dull ache behind my eyes. I didn't cry. The tears felt too precious for this calculated cruelty. I was numb, my movements automatic. As I drove away, the rearview mirror showed Ethan and Cassandra already on the porch, holding hands, looking at my house not as a place of memories, but as a prize. Cassandra pointed. Ethan nodded. They were already claiming it. And in that moment, I knew with a chilling certainty that the boy I had raised, the one who'd given me the lopsided mug, was gone. He was a stranger, and he was capable of much, much more than I could have ever imagined. The stale scent of disinfectant and cheap air freshener hung heavy in the small motel room, a stark contrast to the familiar comfort of my own home. Riverside Inn. The name itself felt like a cruel joke, a place you stopped at, not where you lived. I stared at the peeling wallpaper, the thin blanket, the flickering television. This was my new reality. I had been in this room for hours, the sting of Ethan's betrayal still raw, a wound that refused to close. My phone, clutched in my hand, remained silent. I had called him, of course, countless times, my messages pleading for an explanation, for some sliver of the son I once knew. Each unanswered call was a new stab, confirming his complete abandonment. The silence of the room, broken only by the distant hum of traffic, became unbearable. My old laptop, rarely used these days, sat on the small, scratched desk. With a sigh, I opened it, the familiar hum a small comfort. For the first time in years, I began to meticulously review my finances. My husband, bless his organized soul, had always managed everything before he passed. After that, I trusted Ethan to help me with the online statements, to guide me. I had been so naive, so trusting. My fingers, stiff with a mixture of dread and growing anger, navigated through bank portals and credit card statements. What I uncovered was not just an oversight, but a meticulously woven web of deceit. Years of unexplained charges began to surface, a shocking pattern that painted a vivid picture of Ethan and Cassandra's lavish lifestyle, funded entirely by me. The statements became a gallery of Cassandra's expensive taste. Page after page, charges for designer clothes from boutiques I'd never set foot in, decadent dinners at upscale restaurants where a single meal cost more than my weekly groceries, luxurious spa services that promised rejuvenation I could only dream of, and resort trips to exotic locales. Each line item was a punch to my gut, a stark reminder of their opulent life, built on my dwindling savings. It wasn't just a few rogue purchases, it was an ongoing, systematic drain. As I delved deeper, a terrifying realization dawned on me. There wasn't just one or two credit cards involved. There were 15. 15 credit cards, each open with my name or as an authorized user, all used to fund a life of luxury I didn't even know I was supporting. My head swam with numbers, with the sheer audacity of it all. How could I have been so blind? How could my own son? My finger hovered over the cancel button on one of the card company's websites. A moment of hesitation. This was it. This was the final definitive break. Canceling these cards wasn't just about money. It was about severing the last fragile threads that connected me to Ethan. to the hope that he might still be the boy I raised. The thought alone brought a fresh wave of grief. But then, the image of Cassandra's dismissive smile, Ethan's cold, blank eyes as he told me to leave my own home, flashed in my mind. The betrayal hardened my resolve, turning the ache into a fierce, unwavering determination. With renewed purpose, I began the arduous process. One by one, I called the banks, navigating automated menus, explaining my situation with a forced calm I didn't feel. I need to remove an authorized user, I stated, my voice steadying with each call. I need to cancel this card. I need to lower the limit on this account. Some calls were easy, others required more persuasion, more patience. Each confirmation, each automated voice stating card canceled or user removed, felt like a small, quiet victory. The clock on the motel room wall crept past midnight. My eyes were burning, my shoulders stiff, but a strange mix of relief and power began to settle over me. All 15 sources of their illicit funding were gone. The tap had been turned off. I leaned back in the creaky chair, exhaling slowly. It was done. The immediate threat of further financial depletion was over. The next morning, driven by a gnawing sense of unease, I found myself trailing Ethan's car. I watched as he pulled into the parking lot of Precious Gems in Kothu, a high-end jewelry store, Cassandra already waiting for him. My heart sank, but a cynical part of me wasn't surprised. An engagement ring. Of course, they were shopping for their real wedding, buying their symbols of commitment with my money, the money they had tried to extort from me just yesterday. I stayed hidden, my phone clutched in my hand. They laughed, pointed at display cases, Cassandra gesturing emphatically. I zoomed in, capturing screenshots, recording video clips. Their faces, full of joy and anticipation, were a stark contrast to the despair I felt. This wasn't just about cutting them off. This was about gathering evidence. A quiet voice inside me whispered that I would need it. Back at the motel, slumped onto the bed, I noticed something tucked under the door, a folded piece of paper. My name in elegant script scrawled across the front. Cassandra. My blood ran cold. Alara, it read. Ethan tells me you're being difficult. Don't make things harder for yourself. We both know you'll come around. Cooperate and everything can be smooth. Otherwise, there will be consequences you won't like. It was a thinly veiled threat, a chilling confirmation of her manipulative nature. I felt utterly alone, isolated in this cheap room, threatened by the woman who had stolen my son. My finger scrolled through my contacts, landing on Beatrice's name. My oldest friend, my confidant through decades of life. Hesitantly, I pressed call. Beatrice? My voice cracked, betraying the calm I had tried to maintain. Alara? What on earth? Are you all right? You sound terrible. Her familiar voice, warm and concerned, was like a balm to my aching soul. And then it all spilled out. The ultimatum, the eviction, the shocking discovery of their financial drain. Cassandra's note. Beatrice listened patiently, her occasional gasps and exclamations punctuating my tale of woe. That woman, Alara, I always had a bad feeling about her, Beatrice said, her voice laced with anger. She's a gold digger, plain and simple. She saw an opportunity and she took it, dragging Ethan down with her. What a monster. Her validation, her clear-sighted anger was exactly what I needed. My tears finally came hot and furious, but they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of release, of an awakening. I wasn't going to fight for the house, not yet. I wasn't going to beg for Ethan's love, but I was going to cut off every single thread of financial support that connected them to me. I pulled out my laptop again, opening a new document. Automatic payments, bills for Ethan's phone, his car insurance, his subscriptions, the apartment rent I'd been quietly covering for years, every single one. I began to list them meticulously, a new plan forming in my mind. It was time to take back control. 72 hours, that's how long it took. 3 days of silence from Ethan, days that stretched into an eternity of agonizing anticipation in the cheap motel room. I'd spent them methodically severing every financial tie, canceling subscriptions, rerouting mail, and creating new bank accounts. I knew the call would come. It was only a matter of time until their lavish lifestyle, once cushioned by my unwitting generosity, began to unravel. My phone buzzed on the bedside table, startling me. It was Ethan. My heart hammered against my ribs, a strange mix of dread and a defiant satisfaction. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and answered, "Mom, what's going on? Everything's getting declined." His voice was a torrent of confusion and raw frustration, devoid of any concern for me. "My credit cards are all failing. Every single one." I kept my voice calm, neutral, almost inquisitive. "What credit cards, Ethan?" There was a moment of sputtering on his end, then a sharp, exasperated sigh. "My cards, the ones I use for everything. They're all coming back declined. And it's not just a small purchase, Mom. We just tried to put down the final deposits for the wedding venues, all three of them, and they all failed. That's $15,000 just gone." My grip tightened on the phone. $15,000, deposits on multiple venues. The audacity. "Those weren't your cards, Ethan," I stated, my voice losing its feigned ignorance, gaining a quiet steel. "Those were my cards, and yes, I've canceled them." A stunned silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I could practically hear his brain struggling to process the information, to reconcile his perceived entitlement with this sudden, stark reality. Finally, his voice returned, laced with fury. "You did what? Are you serious? This is so petty, Mom, so vindictive, just because of the house?" The irony of his accusation, given his recent actions, was breathtaking. He couldn't see past his own perceived inconvenience, couldn't fathom the depth of his betrayal. My carefully constructed calm shattered. "Petty? Vindictive?" I practically spat the words. "You kicked me out of my own home, Ethan. You demanded I sign over my entire life savings, my house, my security, for your convenience and Cassandra's expensive taste. Did you honestly think I was going to keep paying for your lifestyle while I slept in a motel room?" "The house was practical, Mom," he stammered, his tone shifting from anger to whiny self-pity. "You're elderly. You don't need such a big place. We were just planning for your future. But this, cutting off my money, that's just mean." "Planning for my future?" I scoffed. "You wanted me gone, Ethan. Out of sight, out of mind. And what about your financial planning? What was your plan if I hadn't provided?" He fumbled for a response, his silence confirming my suspicion. He had no plan. He had simply expected to continue living off my dime, to use my resources as a bottomless pit to fund his desires and Cassandra's dreams of grandeur. Then a new voice, sharp and icy, cut in. "Alara, what exactly do you think you're doing?" It was Cassandra, her carefully modulated tones now brittle with rage. "This is childish. You're ruining everything." "Childish?" I retorted, a fresh wave of adrenaline coursing through me. "And what exactly is your contribution to this relationship, Cassandra, beyond your expensive taste and insatiable desire for other people's money?" A beat of stunned silence. Then Cassandra's voice, dripping with forced sweetness. "My contribution? I give Ethan love, companionship, motivation. I've helped him see his potential, Alara, something you never truly encouraged." It was a thinly veiled jab designed to twist the knife, but I was beyond caring. "And what exactly is this potential you've helped him see?" "Oh," I challenged, my voice rising. "The potential to fleece his own mother?" Cassandra's composure finally cracked. "Look, Alara, we were simply accelerating the timeline for accessing family assets. It's what smart families do. Why should we wait until you're gone to secure our future?" The truth, stark and ugly, hung in the air. Accelerating the timeline for accessing family assets. My money. My life. They hadn't even bothered to hide it anymore. "Well," I said, my voice now cold and steady, a declaration rather than a question, "the acceleration stops now." I didn't wait for a response. I pressed the end call button, the click echoing in the quiet motel room. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. It was a tremor of righteous anger, a surge of newfound power. Later that afternoon, a strange compulsion led me to drive past Precious Gems and Co. I hadn't planned it, but my car seemed to steer itself. As I approached, I saw them. Cassandra, her perfect hair slightly disheveled, was storming out of the store, her face contorted in a furious grimace. Ethan, looking utterly dejected, trailed behind her, his shoulders slumped. Their argument, though inaudible, was palpable, radiating outward in waves of visible frustration. A small, grim smile touched my lips. My work was starting to bear fruit. After watching them peel away in their car, I pulled into the parking lot. A mischievous curiosity, coupled with a need for concrete proof, propelled me inside. The elegant saleswoman, her smile polite but weary, looked up as I entered. "Can I help you, madam?" "Yes," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "I believe a young couple was just in here. My son and his fiancée. I just wanted to verify something about their recent purchase." The saleswoman's smile tightened slightly. "Ah, yes, Mr. and Ms. Harrison. They were just here." She leaned in conspiratorially. "Tried to purchase quite a magnificent set, actually. An engagement ring and 2 wedding bands, totaling $28,000. She paused, lowering her voice further. "All declined, I'm afraid. Every single one of their cards." A knot of satisfaction tightened in my stomach. $28,000. That was a substantial hit. The anger, the devastation, the sheer audacity of it all was finally finding an outlet, a tangible form of justice. This was only the beginning. 5 days of quiet, 5 days without a single call, text, or angry voicemail from Ethan or Cassandra. The silence, initially unnerving, had slowly begun to morph into a fragile, tentative peace. I'd started to fall into a routine at the Riverside Inn, discovering the best time to get coffee from the lobby and finding a small park nearby for my morning walk. A foolish part of me, the part that still clung to the vestiges of hope, began to believe they might have simply given up, moved on to find another unsuspecting victim for their schemes. Perhaps they'd realized the futility of their plan. It was a pleasant delusion, one that allowed me to breathe a little easier. That delusion shattered the moment I pulled into the motel parking lot, grocery bags balanced precariously in my arms. There it was, Cassandra's gleaming white BMW, parked diagonally across 2 spaces, an unmistakable symbol of her self-importance and her imminent arrival. My heart sank, a cold dread washing over me. So much for peace. She emerged from the shadows of the motel overhang, her elegant silhouette hardening into a predatory stance. Her perfectly styled blonde hair seemed to shimmer even in the overcast afternoon. "We need to talk, Alara," she announced, her voice sharper than I remembered, cutting through the mundane sounds of the parking lot. I set my grocery bags down, carefully, deliberately, buying myself a moment to compose my thoughts. "I don't think we have anything to talk about, Cassandra." She strode closer, her heels clicking on the asphalt. "Don't be ridiculous. You've destroyed everything. Everything we've worked for, everything we've planned." Her face was contorted in a mask of outrage, but I saw the underlying panic in her eyes. I stared at her, a cold amusement bubbling up inside me. "Everything you've worked for? What work have you done exactly, Cassandra?" Her jaw tightened. "I've been building a relationship with Ethan, helping him grow, encouraging him to pursue his desires, not hold back because of some outdated notion of filial piety." She gestured around the motel parking lot with a wave of her hand, a sneer twisting her lips. "Unlike your mediocre, small-minded life in places like this." My gaze didn't waver. "This mediocre, small-minded life happens to be what funded your entire luxurious existence for the past few years, Cassandra. The designer clothes, the expensive dinners, the spa days, the resort trips, all paid for by my small-minded money." I watched her perfect facade waver, a flicker of genuine anger replacing her carefully constructed disdain. She quickly regained her composure, her voice dropping to a more insidious tone. "Look, this is ridiculous. We just need you to sign the papers for Terrence's inheritance. It's what he would have wanted for his son, a proper start. The funds are already earmarked for our wedding. Terrence's inheritance is meant for Ethan's future, his security, not to fuel your lavish wedding fantasy," I countered. And as for what Terence would have wanted, he certainly wouldn't have wanted his son throwing his own mother out of her home. Cassandra took another step closer, her eyes narrowing. Suddenly her hand shot out, grabbing my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Don't you understand, Alara? We have prior commitments. Deposits are due. You have to sign these papers now. Her nails dug into my skin. I winced, pulling my arm away. Get your hands off me. She ignored my protest, her voice now dripping with feigned concern. You're humiliating Ethan. His reputation? Our relationship? You're ruining everything for him. Is this really how you want to be remembered? As the mother who destroyed her son's happiness? I actually laughed, a short, sharp bark that surprised even myself. Humiliating him? Cassandra, your entire life, your entire relationship with Ethan is about money you didn't earn. You've both humiliated yourselves far more than I ever could. You're nothing but a gold digger, and he's nothing but a puppet. The accusation hit its mark. Her eyes flashed, her cheeks flushing crimson. I am not a gold digger. I have plans, Alara. A career. A career that seems to involve convincing wealthy men to fund your dreams? I challenged, pushing, watching her unravel. What sacrifices have you truly made, Cassandra? What work have you put in that isn't just hopes and dreams based on someone else's bank account? The mask completely dropped. Her eyes burned with pure malice. You bitter old woman? You think I want to spend my life waiting for you to kick the bucket? We needed that money. I wish you'd just die already. Then we could finally get what's rightfully ours without all this drama. The casual cruelty of her words sent a chill down my spine, wishing for my death. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about a deeply ingrained venom, a complete lack of humanity. She stepped even closer, invading my personal space, her breath hot on my face. If you don't sign those papers, Alara, I promise you, I will make your life very difficult. I know where you work. I know your church. I know your friends. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. You won't have a moment's peace. Wow. My patience, already stretched thin, snapped. This wasn't a negotiation. It was outright extortion. My hand, shaking but determined, reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. That sounds a lot like extortion, Cassandra, I said, my voice dangerously calm. And that, I believe, is illegal. I started to dial. Cassandra's eyes widened in panic. No, she shrieked, lunging for my phone. Her hand clamped around mine, trying to pry it away. We struggled for a moment, a desperate tug of war. Amidst the chaos, something hard and metallic clattered to the ground. It was Cassandra's own phone, slipped from her grasp during her frantic lunge. Just as she bent to retrieve it, I managed to yank my hand free and complete the dial. 911, what's your emergency? A calm voice echoed from my phone. You're not going to believe what happened next. The truth about Cassandra was even darker than I imagined. Stick with me. Like, share, and subscribe to unravel this entire twisted tale. 911, what's your emergency? The calm voice on the other end of the line cut through the tense air of the motel parking lot. My heart was still pounding from the struggle, but a new steely resolve had settled over me. Yes, hello, I began, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm at the Riverside Inn on Elm Street. I need to report a woman who just threatened me, physically grabbed me, and is now attempting to extort money from me. I described Cassandra in as much detail as I could, her pristine white BMW, her tailored cream dress, the distinctive blonde hair. Every word I uttered felt like another brick in the wall of protection I was building around myself. Cassandra, meanwhile, had retreated a few steps, her initial fury replaced by a frantic desperation. She shook her head violently, her eyes wide with disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend that I would actually call the authorities. You're insane, Alara, absolutely insane. Ethan will never forgive you for this. You are going to regret this, I swear. Her voice was shrill, losing its carefully cultivated polish, revealing the raw panic beneath. Her license plate number is XYZ123, I calmly informed the dispatcher, rattling off the series of letters and numbers I had memorized from seeing her car parked outside my old house, then outside the motel one too many times. There was a brief pause on the line as the dispatcher confirmed the details, assuring me that officers were en route. No sooner had I ended the call than two patrol cars, their lights flashing silently, pulled into the parking lot. The sudden arrival was swift and decisive, effectively trapping Cassandra near her vehicle before she could even contemplate fleeing. She froze, her eyes darting frantically between the approaching officers and me, a deer caught in headlights. One of the officers, a tall, authoritative man with a kind but serious face, approached me. "Ma'am, Alara Harrison?" he asked, his voice calm and reassuring. "I'm Officer David Miller. You called about a threat and harassment?" "Yes, officer," I confirmed, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. I gestured towards Cassandra, who stood rigid by her BMW, attempting to project an air of indignant innocence that was completely unconvincing. "That's her, Cassandra Harrison." I recounted the history succinctly and factually, omitting none of the painful details. I explained the financial dispute, their demand for my home and assets, the cold eviction from the house I had lived in for decades. I detailed the shocking discovery of the 15 credit cards and my subsequent decision to cancel them, which had clearly triggered Cassandra's furious visit. As I spoke, Officer Miller listened intently, occasionally nodding, his partner already engaging Cassandra, asking for her identification. "And she's been present near my former residence, and even here at the motel, on several occasions over the past week," I added, realizing the significance of these observations. "I believe she was stalking me, trying to intimidate me into signing those documents." The words sounded stark, but true. This wasn't just a spat, it was calculated aggression. Officer Miller's partner, a younger woman, returned to him, whispering something discreetly. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Officer Miller's expression change, a flicker of surprise and then grim recognition. He turned back to me, his brow furrowed. "Ms. Harrison, it appears Ms. Harrison here, Cassandra, has some outstanding warrants from other jurisdictions." My breath hitched. Outstanding warrants? It was far more than I had anticipated. I had expected a warning, maybe a harassment charge. But this was something else entirely. "Warrants for what, officer?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Officer Miller paused, choosing his words carefully. "While I can't go into full detail right now, I can tell you that they involve similar charges. Fraud, extortion, possibly even identity theft." He looked at me, his gaze softening slightly. "It seems you've uncovered more than just a family dispute over credit cards, ma'am." My eyes instinctively went to Cassandra. She had overheard, her face a mask of shock and disbelief, her perfectly applied makeup unable to conceal the sudden terror in her eyes. It was as if her carefully constructed world had imploded around her in an instant. Officer Miller's partner moved towards Cassandra, her movements precise and professional. "Cassandra Harrison, you're under arrest for outstanding warrants." She began to read her rights, and then, with a quiet click, the handcuffs were fastened around Cassandra's wrists. Cassandra flinched, her mouth opening to protest, but no sound came out. She looked utterly lost, utterly powerless, her facade crumbling completely. As they guided her towards the patrol car, Cassandra's gaze locked onto mine. Her eyes, usually so calculating and cold, were now filled with an intense, burning hatred. It was a raw, unfiltered malice that sent a shiver down my spine. A glimpse into a darkness I hadn't fully comprehended until that moment. She was put into the back of the police car, her head bowed, her defiance seemingly crushed. Watching the police cars drive away, their lights still flashing but fading into the distance, I stood there, rooted to the spot. The air in the parking lot felt lighter, the oppressive tension gone, but a profound realization settled over me. This situation was far more complex, far more sinister, than a simple dispute over my credit cards. Cassandra wasn't just a manipulative gold digger. She was a criminal with a history. A chilling thought crossed my mind then, one that made my stomach clench. Ethan had no idea. My son, caught in her web, was completely ignorant of who he was truly planning to marry, the dangerous history that lurked beneath Cassandra's polished exterior. He had been a pawn, just as I had been a bank account. The next morning, the motel room felt different. The air, though still smelling of stale disinfectant, held a faint scent of possibility. My phone rang, and it was a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Harrison, this is Detective Lena Chen with the City Police Department. We need you to come down to the station this morning to give a full statement regarding Cassandra Harrison." Hours later, I sat in a small utilitarian conference room at the police station. The coffee, served in a styrofoam cup, was terrible, bitter and lukewarm. But I drank it anyway, needing the caffeine to steel myself for what was to come. The sterile environment, the scent of official paperwork, and the quiet hum of the fluorescent lights all served to underscore the gravity of the situation. This was no longer just my personal story. It was becoming a police investigation, and I was at its heart. Detective Lena Chen, a sharp, observant woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, slid a folder across the table toward me. "Ms. Harrison, thank you again for coming in, and thank you for your call yesterday. You might have just helped us solve several ongoing investigations, not just here, but across the state." Her words were delivered with a quiet gravity that sent a shiver down my spine. This was far bigger than I had imagined. "Cassandra Harrison," Detective Chen began, opening the folder, "or rather Cassandra Winters, as she sometimes calls herself, is not who you think she is. Her real name is Vivian Reed." The name Vivian Reed hung in the air, foreign and unsettling. And she's not just a gold digger. She's a professional marriage scammer. Been operating for the past 8 years, moving across multiple states, leaving a trail of ruined lives in her wake. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. A professional scammer? My mind reeled, trying to connect this chilling revelation with the poised, elegant woman who had stood in my living room. Marriage scammer? I whispered, the concept utterly alien. Detective Chen nodded, her expression grim. "Her pattern is always the same. She targets middle to upper middle class men, typically those with some family money or the potential for it. She moves fast. Fast engagement, fast marriage, search fast access to their assets or their family's assets, and then she disappears, leaves them high and dry, taking everything she can get her hands on." She pushed a series of photographs across the table. Each one showed Vivian Reed, but with subtle differences. Different hairstyles, different makeup, slightly different clothing styles. In some, she was smiling sweetly with an older, distinguished-looking man. In others, she was laughing, arm in arm with someone younger, but still clearly affluent. Each photograph was labeled with a different name, a different identity. My stomach churned. This was a master manipulator, a chameleon. "We've identified at least 12 victims so far," Detective Chen continued, her voice devoid of emotion. Yet the weight of her words was immense. The amount stolen ranged from $50,000 to over $2 million. It's not just money either. She destroys lives. She paused, pointing to one specific photo of an elderly gentleman with a kindly face. This man lost $800,000. His entire life savings after Vivian Reed disappeared. He died of a heart attack 3 months later. His family is convinced it was from the stress. A wave of nausea washed over me. This wasn't just about my lost money, or even Ethan's betrayal. This was about a predator, ruthlessly preying on vulnerable people, leaving a path of devastation behind her. And I had almost been another victim. My son had almost brought this monster into our family. Detective Chen looked up, her gaze direct. "Now, Ms. Harrison, thinking back, did Vivian Reed or Cassandra have any access to your financial information over the past 18 months or so?" I closed my eyes, trying to recall every interaction, every casual conversation. "She was at my house often," I began, forcing myself to remember. "Always asking about family and about my late husband. She'd look at old photos, sometimes ask about Terrence's life insurance, his retirement savings. She seemed interested in the future, how I was planning to manage things." Then a sickening realization. And Ethan often helped me with paperwork, online bills, organizing documents. He'd bring his laptop over. Sometimes Cassandra would be there making suggestions, offering to help make sure everything was in order. My voice trailed off. I remember a few times she suggested we consolidate some accounts, streamline things. She even sat with Ethan when he was helping me file taxes once, just offering advice. Detective Chen's eyes narrowed. "So she would have had access to your statements, your account numbers, possibly even passwords?" I suppose so, I admitted, a cold dread seeping into my bones. The picture was becoming terrifyingly clear. That's highly likely then, Detective Chen stated. Given her history, it's imperative you check every single one of your accounts immediately. Every bank statement, credit report, investment statement. Look for any unauthorized activity, any new accounts opened in your name, any changes you didn't initiate. Then another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The will, I blurted out. They demanded I change my will and sign over the house, my savings, my life insurances. They had legal documents for me to sign. Detective Chen nodded slowly, a grim satisfaction in her eyes. Precisely. Had you signed those papers, Ms. Harrison, you would have essentially signed away everything you own. Vivian Reed would have transferred all of it into accounts she controlled, and then she would have disappeared, leaving you with nothing. You were in grave danger. The air in the room seemed to grow heavy. I had been so close to losing everything, to becoming another one of her statistics. But then a new agonizing question arose. What about Ethan? Is he part of this? Is my son involved in this scam? The thought was almost too unbearable to entertain. Detective Chen's expression softened slightly. It's a natural question, Mrs. Harrison. And while we'll certainly be interviewing him, in cases like these, the victims are often genuinely fooled. Vivian Reed, like all good con artists, is an expert manipulator. She isolates her targets, convinces them she's their only ally, and slowly poisons their relationships with family members who might see through her. She builds a world where she's the answer to all their problems, the key to their dreams. It's highly probable Ethan was simply another one of her marks. She slid one last photo across the table. My breath hitched. It was Vivian Reed, smiling, dressed in a white gown, arm in arm with a man I didn't recognize, standing in front of a church, and on her left hand, a dazzling engagement ring. This photo was taken 3 months ago, Ms. Harrison, in Denver. Vivian Reed was engaged to this man, a wealthy businessman, at the same time she was engaged to your son. The image cemented the full horror of her deception. My son, caught in a lie, a collateral casualty in her cruel game. The layers of her deceit were truly boundless. My mind struggled to comprehend the sheer audacity of Vivian Reed. Not just one scam, but multiple, running concurrently. The engagement photo with the Denver businessman, taken just 3 months ago, while she was actively planning a wedding with Ethan, was a chilling testament to her calculated duplicity. She wasn't simply moving from one mark to the next. She was juggling lives, identities, and emotional manipulation with a terrifying efficiency. It made me wonder how she kept it all straight, how she moved money between the various unwitting accounts she'd undoubtedly established. Detective Chen provided more grim details. The Denver man, Mr. Thompson, reported losing over $400,000 before he finally realized what was happening. By the time he went to the authorities, she was long gone. Luckily, we had enough evidence from his case to link her to several others, which is why your call was so crucial. $400,000. The number hung in the air, a stark reminder of how close I had come to suffering a similar fate. Ms. Harrison, Detective Chen's voice cut through my thoughts, urgent and serious. Given her history and the fact that you've now cut off her access, it's imperative you act immediately to protect your assets. She's likely already initiated transactions or opened accounts in your name using the information she gleaned from your paperwork. The next 3 hours were a blur of phone calls. From the small, sterile conference room, I contacted every bank, every credit card company, every investment firm I held an account with. I changed passwords, set up two-factor authentication, and placed fraud alerts on all my credit reports. The exhaustion was immense, but the detective's warning spurred me on. Every click, every new password felt like a small act of defiance against the woman who had tried to steal my life. And then, the shocking discovery. During one of the calls, a bank representative casually mentioned 3 active credit cards that I had no recollection of opening. Upon further investigation, they were indeed in my name, but the statements showed a pattern of luxury spending and cash advances that paralleled Cassandra's known habits. Nearly $30,000 in debt, amassed in a matter of months. I recounted this to Detective Chen, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. She opened these in my name. How could I not know? It happens more often than you'd think, Miss Harrison, Detective Chen replied, her tone reassuring, especially with the level of information she had. Luckily, since these are clearly fraudulent, you won't be held responsible for the debt. We'll guide you through the process of filing the necessary reports to clear your name, but it confirms our suspicions. She was actively working to drain your finances, not just through authorized accounts, but through outright identity theft. Relief washed over me that I wouldn't be liable for the fraudulent debt, but it was quickly overshadowed by the sickening confirmation of Vivian Reed's ruthlessness. She had seen me as nothing more than an item, a resource to be exploited. How could Ethan not know? I asked, my voice raw with a mother's anguish. How could he be so blind, so unaware of who he was with? Detective Chen sighed, her gaze sympathetic. Ms. Harrison, these individuals are experts at what they do. They compartmentalize their lives so completely that even those closest to them have no idea. They create a believable fantasy, a carefully constructed persona. They tell their victims exactly what they want to hear, isolate them from anyone who might be suspicious, and slowly chip away at their critical thinking. Ethan probably believed everything she told him because he wanted to. It's a powerful psychological game. Her words offered a glimmer of understanding, but they also brought a fresh wave of grief. My son, he was about to learn that the woman he loved, the woman he had been planning to marry, the woman for whom he had cast aside his own mother never existed. His reality, built on her lies, was about to crumble into dust. The devastation he would feel, the humiliation, the sheer betrayal, it would be immense. I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that I had to talk to him. Despite his actions, despite the pain he had caused me, he was still my son. He was another one of her victims, albeit one who had inadvertently facilitated her plans against me. I had to save him from further harm, from the crushing weight of this truth when it inevitably came out. He might not believe you at first, Detective Chen warned, as if reading my thoughts. Victims of this kind of manipulation often go through a period of intense denial. They've invested so much emotionally, so much of their identity into the relationship, that accepting it was all a lie can be almost impossible at first. I understand, I replied, my voice hoarse. It would be hard, perhaps the hardest conversation of my life, but I knew I couldn't abandon him to face this alone, even after everything. He was still my son. Did she ever truly intend to marry him? I asked, the question escaping my lips almost involuntarily. Or was it always just for the money? Detective Chen paused, her expression hardening. Based on Vivian Reed's pattern, Ms. Harrison, the engagement is merely a tactic. It creates urgency. It pushes the target to make quicker decisions, to overcome any objections, to finalize the transfer of assets under the guise of starting a new life together. It's a tool, nothing more. Leaving the police station, the afternoon sun felt harsh, the world outside strangely muted. A profound mix of relief and heartbreak settled over me. Relief that I had uncovered the truth, that I was safe, that Vivian Reed was finally apprehended. And heartbreak for Ethan, for the devastating blow that was about to shatter his world. The drive back to the motel was a quiet one. My mind was already racing, preparing for the inevitable conversation with Ethan. I had to choose my words carefully, gather the evidence. His reality was about to crumble, and I, his mother, was the one who had to hold the hammer. The familiar street of my old neighborhood felt foreign, hostile, as I parked my car a block away. For 20 minutes I sat there, gathering every ounce of courage I possessed. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. This wasn't just about revealing a painful truth. It was about confronting my son alone with a reality that would shatter his world. The thought of his pain, even after his callous betrayal, twisted my stomach. But it had to be done. My house. It looked different somehow. The flowers in the window boxes were wilting, the lawn a little overgrown. Small, subtle signs of neglect reflecting the void my absence had created. It was no longer my sanctuary, but a stage for the impending confrontation. I walked up to the front door, hesitating only a moment before pressing the doorbell. The chime, once a joyous sound, now felt like a summons to an execution. The door creaked open and Ethan stood there. My heart ached at the sight of him. He looked utterly devastated, his hair disheveled, dark circles smudged beneath his eyes. His face cycled through a whirlwind of emotions. Surprise at seeing me, then a flicker of anger, quickly followed by a raw, desperate relief. "Mom," he croaked, his voice hoarse. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. The truth needed to be delivered, stark and immediate. "Ethan, she's in jail." The words hit him like a physical blow. He staggered back, leaning against the doorframe for support, his eyes wide and disbelieving. What? What are you talking about? Jail? Mom, is this your way of getting back at me because I made you leave? His voice was a mixture of confusion and raw accusation, a defense mechanism already kicking in. I stepped inside, my gaze sweeping over the living room. It was a chaotic mess. Takeout containers littered the coffee table, clothes were draped over the armchairs, and a general air of disarray hung heavy, a reflection of his emotional state since Cassandra's disappearance. It was clear she hadn't been there for a while. "She's been gone, Mom," he mumbled, waving vaguely at the mess. 2 days. Won't answer my calls, my texts. I thought you had something to do with it." His gaze was suspicious, wounded. I walked over to the armchair, the very one where he and Cassandra had delivered their cold ultimatum, and sat down. The irony wasn't lost on me. "I do," I said, my voice firm but gentle. "She was arrested yesterday by the police for fraud, extortion, identity theft. She has outstanding warrants in multiple states, Ethan." He stared at me, his face pale. No, that's not true. You're lying, Mom. You're just trying to hurt me, to get back at me for everything." His denial was vehement, just as Detective Chen had predicted. I reached into my bag, pulling out the folder Detective Chen had given me. "I wish I were, son, but I'm not." I laid the photographs out on the coffee table, the same table where he'd presented my will. "Her name isn't Cassandra Harrison or Cassandra Winters.